yeah, you sort of invited me to speak, and I've never done anything like that in my life. Like, I might come across pretty confident, but I'm just not that kind of person. But I really felt like it was a real opportunity to be a Christian voice in the mix, especially because the church had failed so much. I really
Yeah.
wanted people to know that not all Christians got this wrong. And especially, like, just, I didn't want people to feel like there was no hope. If the church has failed, like, we can never go. I wanted people to see that there was something for them still there.
Hello and welcome back to a Woman Refined podcast. I'm your host, as always, Lauren Renee. And this month on the podcast, we have my good friend, Evelyn Rae. Yeah, that's right. You may remember Evelyn Rae. You're like, what is that name? I think that sounds familiar. Yes, it is familiar. If you lived in Australia and sometimes overseas during the 2020 COVID times, you may remember Evelyn Rae. She was a very outspoken voice in Australia. She's an ex-police officer, ex-detective, and Christian woman who was very outspoken during that time on her beliefs and had a very unique perspective in which to bring to the conversation. Her and I became good friends during that time. And she has since deleted all of her social media, except for her spot on Sky News, which you will sometimes find her on there still giving some epic takes. But other than that, you don't see her much anymore. And so I feel very blessed and very thankful that she gave up her evening to spend it with you and me. And so we go deep into a lot of religious chat, actually, in this podcast, which I did not expect it to go that way, but that's the way we ended up. I found it really interesting, really fascinating. And I like that there can still be respectful discussion um, in media. And so I'm stoked that this is going to be out there and that it's going to be hopefully an example of that. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think. You can do all the social media things, the clicking like, follow, and subscribe, or you can send me feedback at our womanrefinedpodcast@gmail.com or DM me on Instagram and let me know. Either way, love to hear it. And if you like it, share it with your friends. That'd be amazing. You could like rate the show on Spotify or YouTube. That also really helps. So, yeah. If you want to follow Evelyn, she doesn't have a social media anymore, but you can definitely watch Sky News and catch her on there. Although she did say she does have someone putting up some stuff that she still does on her Facebook. So maybe you can find her on there if you're still on the books of the face. Anyways, hopefully you enjoy this chat that we had and enjoy this episode. And I'll see you all next month for more. Evelyn Rae, welcome to A Woman Refined. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. I'm shocked that I was invited to such a high uh, classed podcast, but thank you.
You're the classiest woman I know. What are you talking about?
Oh, now people are going to know you're a liar.
That's not true. I remember being online uh very early days, like I would say, over 5 years ago now. Um, and there was not very many classy women that I was finding online. And I remember coming across your stuff, and I had messaged you, and then we found out we had a mutual friend, which was
Mm.
how we ended up connecting. Um, but I remember messaging you. I found your stuff. I was like, oh my God, finally a woman with brains, with an opinion, and who isn't afraid to speak it, and who is also beautiful and not like some crazy liberal, who is just raging at the camera. Like, who is this woman? I must know her.
No, that was great. I love how we connected. And then it was just like, that 6 degrees separation thing. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, we've sort of, it's like a remarkable love story we've had of this beautiful friendship. And now I'm like such a loser out here in the country. No, like, you're probably one of my closest friends after all this. So
And we live so far away from each other.
I know. We're always trying to catch up. Oh, it's so hard though, isn't it?
Both
But
country girls. You're way more rural than I am, but both country girls. But our country is so big that we are
mm,
very, very far away from each other, even though we're both in the country. And
I
even in the
know.
same state, it's ridiculous.
Crazy. And the roads are just terrible. Every time I have to drive down your way, it's just
Mm,
like one of my most hated drives, like
yeah,
that long stretch of highway. No.
the worst roads, the worst
Mm,
roads. Um, you know what I was thinking about as well earlier? I was thinking about how we did Millions March Against
mm,
Mandatory Vaccinations, which was a protest that happened during lockdown. And because I had Joel on a few episodes ago, and Joel Rafiti, he was, for those who don't know, he's a podcaster, a Twitter entrepreneur, like has some great thoughts, and he's a rapper, he's a conscious rapper, and he's been doing music about all this kind of stuff for years. And he was there, and we were talking about how we had met at that protest, and how that protest was like people had forgotten that
mm,
we didn't actually have permission to leave our
mm,
houses. Like to do that protest, it was one of the biggest protests that happened in Australia at that time. And you spoke at it, and I was running the stage. And um, there was like talk of if anybody goes, you're going to be arrested.
mm.
And we had to get like some special written permission to like leave our houses and attend this protest, which is like kind of the antithesis of a protest.
Where have we seen this before?
Yeah. But we all risked it. We all were like, we were all going whether we had this special permission or not. But yeah, we all risked it and went and decided to like stand up for our rights. And I remember listening to your speech there at the time, and it was very powerful. And I remember people in the crowd, like their response, because I was on stage with you. I was one of the few people that was on stage with everyone. So
Mm,
I got to see the reactions of everyone's faces in the crowd. But I think people also don't realize when you're on stage, the kind of feedback that you get energetically from like, you can feel when people are angry, you can feel when people are excited. It's like a big wave of feeling coming at you, the one person who's on stage. So anyone who's on stage, you can really feel what's going on. And I remember with your one, just like I could feel people being like in awe. It was really like a very powerful speech. And I think as well, because you're a woman, I think it was more impactful, to be honest with you, because it's not
mm,
often that you see, like I said, like that you see people who are articulate, intelligent, that are also well put together, classy. You just don't see that as often. And I think that it was so good to have you like represent in that way. I felt very proud. I was like, yeah, Dad's my friend.
Well, it's so funny because like I'm a Christian, and so for me, I had a lot of moral things to sort of battle with during that time because the Bible teaches us to, obey the authorities. Like that's what it's in Romans 13. And it's so funny because I think the church just failed
Mm,
intensely during that time. And you really got to sort of see how people don't actually understand theology. People don't understand what's written in the Bible because everything that Romans 13 talks about, which is our relationship with the government, the civil authorities, has to be read in the context of Romans 12. And that's where it kind of outlines what the government should and should not be doing. So for me, it was, once I had kind of really got into the theology of it and I was really comfortable in my conscience that I wasn't disobeying God. I was like, no, I don't need to, I don't need the civil authorities' permission to be there
mm,
because they are not my God. And I do not need to obey them when they're telling me to basically disobey what the Bible teaches. And so, yeah, once I, kind of got my head around that, I was like, I'm going to go. And then I remember you sort of with kind of the brains behind the operation on the stage and organizing things. And yeah, you sort of invited me to speak. And I've never done anything like that in my life. Like I might come across pretty confident, but I'm not. I'm just not that kind of person. But I really felt like it was a real opportunity to be a Christian voice in the mix, especially because the church had failed so much. I really wanted people to know that not all Christians got this wrong. And especially, like just, I didn't want people to feel like there was no hope. If the church has failed, like we can never go. I wanted people to see that there was something for them still there. And so, but I remember on the day, the people who spoke before me, I think I had to go through like the smoking ceremony, like of the Indigenous people. And for me, that's like very immoral for me, right? So as a Christian, like that's a thing that I don't condone. They by all means do like what they want, but for me, I can't participate in it. I don't want any part of it. It goes very much against my conscience. And I remember going through the smoke and getting up on stage and being like, well, this is going to be a shock to everyone because my speech was very much Christ is King. And I said that before, that was in what, 2020 was it? 2021?
21, I think.
Yeah, it was a long time ago and it's sort of caught on now. It's got really trendy, but I kind of feel like a sort of especially in Australia, I was probably the first person to kind of say that statement publicly. But I really did feel like what you said, there was the crowd just really responded in a way I wasn't expecting because I didn't mince my words. I wasn't a lukewarm Christian like so many are. I wasn't like, and this is absolutely no credit to myself. By God's grace, like he just sort of used me as his tool for this. And yeah, I just felt really sort of led by the Holy Spirit and just, yeah, Christ is King, that like he's above the government. And like the reason why our country is utterly failing with this is because they don't acknowledge Christ. They don't acknowledge God above government. And because of that, the state becomes God and they get to be the arbiter of truth and authority, human rights. They get to tell us morality. And as a Christian, I obviously know it doesn't come from the government, it comes from God, and he's the one who owns us. And it was pretty epic. And then I had to follow it up with the second speech, I can't remember what March that was exactly, but oh man, I felt like I had some big shoes because I was like, how do I do that again? I don't think it had the same effect. It didn't have the same effect as the first one. It was pretty special. I'll remember that forever, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting though because we, as much as like you're right, we purport to be a nation based on Christian values, as most of the West is built upon that. Yet it's like this family member that nobody wants to talk about. It's like, oh yeah, our whole ideas, all of our morals, all of our laws, all of our culture comes and stems from this one ideology, but we just don't want to acknowledge that, and we just want to talk about that, and we just want to pretend that that doesn't exist and that doesn't happen, and then it leaves everything very murky, and it's like people don't know where they stand. And when things are murky and when things are like not clear, that's when I always find there's like a power vacuum. And then people just, use that murkiness for the cover of their shady behavior, and they go in there and they do their corrupt things and they take that position of power and they change things and they warp the laws and they warp the morals and they change the culture and all that kind of stuff because it's not clear. But you're absolutely right in the sense of like the crowd really responded to the fact that I think what you did is you gave them a voice to say that there is another option for Christians. Like I think that there's a lot of, I mean, like this is just my perception. I don't classify myself as a Christian, even though I do believe in God. But my perception is that I think a lot of Christians want to be good people and don't want to be like seen as a Christian who's judging other people or, like putting other people down. So they might like quieten their beliefs or like not be very forward with in their faith or in their like in their secureness in like, I'm going to behave this way because it's what is really true for me. And I think with you being so solid and secure in your rightfulness of like, this is who I am and this is what I follow, and I will speak that loud and I will speak that clearly, and in not a way that you trashed anybody else at all, but you really just, spoke so confidently that it gave people this like beacon of light of like, oh, I could do that. I didn't know I could do that. It was okay to do that. And it doesn't, I'm not a bad person for doing that. I'm not, it's like, because the whole thing during COVID was like, love the neighbor, love thy neighbor,
Yes.
you've got to take care of each other. You should sacrifice yourself. Like I remember reading comments from other Christians being like, Jesus sacrificed for us, we should
Yeah.
sacrifice. It was like there's a lot of rhetoric that gets twisted and used for people's own
Mm.
agendas. So I think that, yeah, you gave another option, another side to
Mm.
it. And that is why I think people responded so strongly, because they were like, oh yeah, I forgot
Mm.
that there was another
Well,
way.
tyranny always comes masked as a hero. That's the thing. And so
Mm,
Christians weaponized that, and they used, the typical words of love thy neighbor and all those different things to, yeah, basically push, what they want, their agenda. It's very sad when you see the church do stuff
mm,
like that. But it's funny, the response on the day was actually quite like incredible, because from that, I had some people that I knew who own a Christian bookstore, and they had a lot of people in the crowd coming up to people saying, talking about Christianity again and saying, you know what, actually, I think I want to revisit this relationship with God. And so I teamed up with this bookstore and handed out free Bibles to anybody who reached out. And I think there was like, I'm talking like maybe close to 100 or more Bibles that were given out to people, and people have said that they came back to the faith. And so it was quite amazing. And it's also funny because there are all different types of doctrines within Christianity, and I would fall in Reformed theology.
mm.
So it's not Catholicism, it's part of Protestantism, but yeah, very Reformed theology. People might not understand, but I'm very Calvinistic in my doctrine, which can give people a bit of a sour taste in the mouths because, yeah, it's not very lukewarm. It's quite
Mm.
straightforward. But I think people are so starved for something meaningful and true. That's why
100%.
you see so many people looking at Islam and Catholicism
Yeah.
and Orthodoxy, because there is tradition, there is structure, there is,
Yeah.
discipline. And I think the Protestant church has really lost a grasp on that. But to be able to be a Reformed Protestant, to offer something like that, like I felt God really used that whole day to glorify him, and a lot of good
Mm.
fruit came from it. But in that Reformed theology, like I take very seriously what the Apostle Paul wrote to the churches, which was women are to remain silent. Women are not to speak or have any authority over man in the church. And so I was sort of mindful on the day to not preach, to not say a sermon, but I just wanted to just deliver the truth. And it wasn't behind a pulpit, it wasn't preaching in a church capacity. So I felt again comfortable to speak on the day as a woman, because it wasn't really some authoritative disciplinary figure over church context. But I think the reason as well, and I have to give credit to the men in my life, because the only reason I have good theology is because of how they've led me. Once upon a time, I was that lukewarm Protestant Hillsong type Christian that just was airy fairy and had absolutely no clue what the Bible meant. And it was through really good men with a lot of patience, mind you, sort of in my life to sort of instruct and teach that has sort of got me out of that place. And once you're there, you just can't you can't go back. Like once you've really been enlightened to what's actually in sola scriptura, which is like, you know, the Bible alone, there's just, you can't do anything else. It's too hard to ignore. But
Did you cop any backlash from anyone for being a woman and speaking in that way?
oh, little things. I cop a lot of backlash for a lot of different things. You know, you're aware of it. You probably witnessed it when I have my social media accounts. Yeah, there are a lot of people who, again, like would always have something to say and would be like, you know, should a woman even be on social media, and sort of fighting this fight. And that's something that I do consider and think of. And it's part of the reason I did step back. I deleted all of my social media, but one, which is my Facebook account, but I don't even like, as in, obviously I have access and I can write and do things, but there's somebody who I have asked to just share stuff that I still do. But it is, you know, you've got to ask the question, is the battle place a place for a woman? And I would say no. I would say there are many things women can do to help, but I would say it's not really, the front lines are not really a place. And so it's just this struggle I have within myself, as to whether, you know, we can, is this a healthy place? I'm not saying we can't, but I think that particularly women in this space, like I'm into politics and religion and culture, which is a pretty nasty, pretty brutal, bloody battlefield.
Yeah.
And so you do have to ask yourself, like, should I be here? Should this be a place for the men to fight it out? And there are a few contexts in the Bible, again, where women do lead, like Deborah, and you have all these amazing prophetess women in the Bible, but the context is always like as a curse. It's like the men are utterly failing and not filling their vocation, and the women have to step up, and God gives them their grace in that moment to do it. And at the moment, I would say we are starved for good men. Like I would say, let me rephrase, there are a lot of good men, but unfortunately society is sort of pivoted to only uplift and sort of showcase the weak men. And so especially in politics, I would say, like, for example, Moira Deeming in Victoria, I would vote for her over any of the male politicians down there. And that's saying something, because I don't like women in politics. And so, but I would, because the men are not doing what they should be doing. So yeah, and that was really probably not well said, and I probably went around in circles, but
no, I got you.
Yeah, I think it's just, I think I've been a lot happier and a lot healthier since I've stepped back to a degree and limited how much I put myself on the battlefield. Because you were there too, like we were in the thick of it through one of the biggest tyrannical pushes of our lifetime, like that it would be of our lives. And so we took a beating. Like it was hard, like online, like I had people send me death threats. I had people from Antifa stalking me. Like I had a lot of bad stuff happening to me. And so things have actually been really good since I haven't been there. I'm still fighting the fight. Like I've still got a spot on Sky News where I get to talk about things, but again, it's limited, it's controlled. I get to say what I want and what I don't want to do. And I've got really good support in my life for the limited, times where I do speak out. But yeah, it's, I don't regret the time that we had, like when we were doing it. It was fun and scary, and
there's a lot of things.
It was a good learning experience and everything, but I'm really glad now that I've made the decision to kind of limit how much I put myself in that fight.
I do have people messaging me quite often being like, can you tell Evelyn I say hi? And how is Evelyn going? Is she okay? I think about her all the time. So people, I mean, you made an impact for sure. And, it's an interesting thing what you're saying. And even though I don't come at it from a biblical standpoint, I come at it from a biological standpoint. And I have to agree, because of the hormones that like women should, that's not the state that we should be putting ourselves in at all. It's not actually making us healthier. It's not making us happier. It's not making us closer to God in any way, I don't think. But I also think there's a lot of nuance to it. So I think that the way that you approach that, so I think about it, and I can speak to a biblical woman. Like I think about Esther, right? And I think about the way that she was able to use her womanhood to explain things and to not convince, but like she got the point across to the point where she made a big difference. That's huge. And I don't think that she did it in a way where she was going into battle. I think it was put on her in that way. And I think about that often, like the way that we approach it. I don't think that we should approach it in the way that men approach it, where it is like this battle where they're going and they're out there fighting. I think that the way that we approach it, because women need to be led by other women as well. Like we need to have good examples of women in media, in society, in culture. We need to have women who are like showing options for a good woman. Otherwise, who are women going to look up to if they're just the only people they're seeing are blue haired liberals
Yeah.
screaming on the internet? So I think that there's a good argument for women being in the social eye in that way. But again, I think that there's ways to do it where maybe you're not engaging in arguments. Maybe you're speaking solely to your experience, and maybe you're saying what's on your heart rather than trying to convince someone else. There's very different ways of approaching it and the energy that you put towards it. And I think from where I stand, I look at what kind of hormones is that engaging? Am I like raising my cortisol levels, ready to go out there and fight people every day? Or am I just like very peaceful and calm and just sharing what's on my heart? And if that resonates with you, then great. And we can have a conversation about it. Or if it doesn't, you feel okay to leave it and you don't feel like you need to come and beat me down on the internet because we have a difference of opinion. I think yeah, I think, because I think you're right. I don't think that is a good place for us to be as women. But how do we still honor our drive to speak, be that intuitive womanhood, that woman who is led by something deeper, that is not really led by that outside noise, because that's not really where we play. That's not our field. That's the men's field to be out there battling all those battles. We're more inward. We're a little bit more quiet. We're a little bit more intuitive. We're a little bit more in our bodies. And how do we honor that? And how do we still be led by that and still speak to that in ways that are respectful of, I guess for you, your biblical stance, but like for me, for the biological stance, like how do we honor all of that? And yeah, I think there's nuance, and I think that there is space to do it, but I think it's the way that we approach things that really make a difference.
Yeah, for sure. I had this really good conversation with some gentlemen from this podcast called Cross Politic. It's a really good theological podcast if any Christians are interested. But I was in the police, as you know, as well, before all this, for nearly 12 years. I literally was the front lines. And so I went from one to another. I'm so stupid. But yeah, they sort of asked me as a Christian, how do you feel about that? And I was like, you know what? I wouldn't want to see young girls like if a young girl in a church came up to me and was like, oh, I really want to be a police officer like you, the first thing I would do, I'd say, run. Don't even entertain those thoughts, especially today. But there's complexities around the vaccine mandate and whatnot. But like even just based on the job, I'd be like, run. I would discourage young women in going into that line of employment and career. But when I was speaking to these guys, I said, there is a slight nuance though, because for a period of time, I was a detective in child sex crimes and abuse. And there were certainly contexts there in which only a female could have done the things that I did. The children were just non-responsive to any male figure. And in the police, you can't like you have to be on the front lines for 3 years before you can be a detective, and then before you can even do your training
Mm.
to be in this field. So you've got to how do you reconcile that? The system is like set up in a way that kind of fails, I think, women and victims, because I'd love for a way for women to be able to serve and to use their
Yeah.
womanly attributes and God-given differences from men for that kind of justice system, because children need justice when it comes to that. And if women are the only ones who can deliver that, how do you then make that happen? And so it was a really constructive and helpful
Mm.
conversation with those three men. And I don't think they thought about it because they were just so black and white about, women shouldn't be on the front lines. And to a degree, I would agree with that. But what about cases like that? And how do you, with a
Yeah.
system where there's no other way, how do you then deal with that? And so, yeah, I think a lot of things have to change from a fundamental level. But yeah, I definitely could see the difference even in that job between what men and women bring to those things.
Mm.
But yeah, I've certainly lived a very rebellious life against my femininity, haven't I? this is this has been a journey, I tell you that, because yeah, I kind of did that and quit, and then was sort of thrust into private military, and then all of this sort of stuff. And it's only now I'm kind of over it all, to be honest, and I'm just exhausted of it all. But at
Mm.
the same time, I can't help myself because I just feel like something needs to be said. And so I'm always fighting myself. There's like part of me that knows that this isn't good for me, especially as a woman. But then there's a part of me that's like, oh, no one else is doing it right, and I just need to do it, and I need to say it, and I just need to get it out there. And so I've really got to be very disciplined, or I find that I can get back into a pretty bad trap of getting back on the front lines and having to debate people on absolutely everything. And it's tough. It's tough retraining myself after all those years on the front line to then realize it's actually really not good for me. And also, like, it's sort of changed somewhat my nature. Like nature is nature. You can't, it's truth. You can't
Mm.
change it. That's like why I'm against all of the woke ideology stuff. Like,
Mm.
it's all that silly stuff, like can't even define what a man is and a woman is, all that ridiculous crap. But I was 18 when I joined the police, and it did somewhat change me in ways that I wish it didn't.
Mm.
And I don't think it's possible that I can get that back, no matter how much I'm happy, I'm not
Mm.
bitter, but there are just unchangeable things now in my nature as a result of it. And I guess that's the consequence of my poor decisions and not having, like we said, older women to
Yeah.
teach me. It's in the Bible in Titus. It says older
Mm.
women are to train the younger women in how to be good wives and mothers. I
Yeah.
didn't have I love like the women in my life, but they were duped as well. And so
Yep.
it's just the cycle that just keeps going
Yeah.
around.
Absolutely. There's a real epidemic of older women who are very bitter and very resentful, and who give really bad advice to a lot of younger women. And
Mm,
I'm hoping as I get older to not be like that and to step into that. Like I look forward to aging for that purpose, so I can step into that elder role one day and
mm,
be a different voice for younger women. And I think that's why I continue to be on social media, continue to be an example, continue to just be a person that is like, has a handout, and it's like, it's here if you want it. And I don't, before, I'm very similar to you in so many ways. I was super hyper independent, very combative, very argumentative, very opinionated. And I would
it's
debate
the
everyone
Italian
too.
in
Yeah, that's right.
you.
I would debate everyone, and I would really like, I would want to debate men because I'd want to be like you. Like, I found there were a lot of men that I just was like, why am I smarter than you? Or why am I stronger than you? Why am I more principled than you? This is wrong. And so I would like kind of like go at them and challenge them to kind of, I don't know, maybe show them up, or like there was a part of me that was like, come on, meet me here. And then that's where you should be, you know? But I
Mm,
think, yeah, there was also a part of me that was probably just wanting to win. And that's, we all make poor decisions because none of us got out of like this feminism culture that we were all raised in alive. Like it affected absolutely everybody in different ways, but everybody is affected. Both men and women were affected by it. And a lot of us made a lot of poor decisions. And it takes a lot to undo a lot of that. And for people like yourself, I can't even imagine the things that you must have seen, which would have
mm,
changed like your brain chemistry for sure. Because I even think about, I remember when I don't know which, maybe it was the Ukraine stuff. I don't know. It was when something was happening quite a few years ago and people were just sharing everything on Instagram. And I was like, you guys need to stop sharing all this graphic stuff,
mm,
because as a woman, like my nervous system is getting really affected by just opening up something that I'm using as like a fun app. And like everybody is like trauma dumping on everyone else and sharing this graphic stuff. Like women are sharing it to other women. I'm getting sent this in my inbox, like it was just, I was like, no one is protecting anyone else here. Everyone's just like, I've been traumatized by this, so I'm going to share it with you and you can be traumatized by this. And
mm,
that was just stuff that I was seeing on Instagram. I can't even imagine the stuff that you've had to deal with and come across in real life. And like there, it takes a certain type of person to do that. And it takes, I can imagine it would fundamentally change you. And there's nothing
mm,
that, once you can't go back from that, whether you saw that on purpose or whether you didn't see it on purpose, you're exposed to it. It's just the way that it is. And then you have to figure out the way to like reconcile that within your own heart. And that's
mm,
really, I found for myself and the things that I was exposed to, that's what I found really hard, was to continue to reconcile that with like the part of me that feels like I wasn't protected from
mm.
that, and that wish that I had like a very regulated nervous system that was peaceful and not like, you know,
Yeah.
replaying images that I wish I'd never seen, when I close my eyes at night, like that kind of stuff. And I haven't even seen half the stuff that I can imagine you have. So it is, it is easy to say we made poor choices, but I think also the entire society has led everybody to make poor choices that nobody even realizes that they're poor choices, if that makes sense. Like everything is so normalized that there's no way. I think we have to have a bit of grace for what we've all been through. And I think what happens is when we come to the other side, it's how you address that and how you acknowledge that, and then how you heal from that, and how you know like really repent from that and be like, oh, I made mistakes, I own that, I take responsibility for that, and I'm dedicated to doing the work on myself so that's never going to happen again. And then I'm going
Mm.
to hopefully be a better example for other women so they know that they have a choice too, and they don't have to continue down that OnlyFans route that like apparently every poor young woman is going down at the moment. There's other options for them.
Yeah. Isn't that awful? Oh, that whole look, I know we're saying taking responsibility and stuff, but I'm all for blaming things as well. I think there is a place for that. And one of the biggest things, I've gone down the rabbit hole of the boomers. I'm sorry if there's boomers listening. Oh, oh man, I tell you what. See, this is where I'm trying to have self discipline, which is a fruit of the spirit. I'm going to tame my tongue, which James in the Bible likes to talk about a lot. So I'm going to try very hard to do that. But for those of you who are of the boomer generation, and this doesn't apply to you, you are a bloomer. So you can just not hate me because I'm not speaking to you. But I really think that so much of these cultural problems that we have around the role of men and women and our role, iconography, you name it, it all was kind of brought in through that generation. And it was all under the guise of freedom. It's
Mm.
always that way. Like I said before, tyranny always comes disguised as a hero of freedom. And it's just the complete opposite. But I do blame them for a lot of our problems. And sadly, I actually think that when they all die off, that things will start to get better. And that's really sad. And that's where we're going back to personal responsibility in that may I never be a woman or a mother or a wife or a sister or a friend or part of a generation where people go, isn't it better that they're all dead? Isn't it better? Aren't our lives more enriched now that they're not in it? Because that's not the sort of person and the sort of world I would like to leave for, our kids and their kids and whatnot. So I think that it's almost helpful to figure out where a lot of the problems come from so that we can correct and, make it end with us and stop that cycle, so to speak. But I think that.
How do you think it got to them? Like, what do you think happened for them in their childhood to like make them the way that they are?
Well, I think that they were the children of war veterans. They were the offspring of the people who endured the, World War One and World War Two. And then they were kind of around for like the Vietnam War and whatnot. And so you've got, I'm not going to get into World War conspiracies.
Not today, we're not.
Not today when we stop recording. But honestly, I think that it is as simple as that old saying where it's hard times create good men create good times create weak men create hard times create good men. And it's just this constant yo-yo of that. I think that the men, even whether it was a just or unjust, war, whatever you want, regardless, I would say majority of men who went and fought that war did it with good intentions because they wanted to protect their home, their family, their loved ones, their nation. They had a pride in their nation and their home, and they were good men, and they came back and had to work really, really hard to try and create good times. And the boomers kind of reaped the benefits of that, and just happens like it always has happened throughout history. Good times create weak men. And I think, you look at the 60s, you had the sexual revolution, you had all the push for abortions, you had divorce, no fault divorces come in, you had basically the rejection of Christianity. And, it's so funny because all of that generation fought so hard to have this freedom and liberty and all these sorts of things. But the way that they did it was by dismantling the very foundations of what built our country, like what we said right at the beginning when we started talking, because it wasn't Judeo-Christian. That's an oxymoron. They can't even go side by side. It was not, secularism or moral relativism. It was Christ. It was Christianity who built the West. It was Christianity that stopped the Vikings and the Picts and the Anglo-Saxons from killing each other. That was the only thing that went through Europe and the UK and all the Anglo nations and brought peace and prosperity. It was Christ. And in dismantling what built our legal systems, our morality, what defined our truth, in dismantling that, what they've done is they've actually like unshackled the tyrant by trying to get rid of Christ. They've let go of what Christ kept under his feet. And that was big government, that was tyranny, that was evil. Because it's just always so ironic to me that people have tried so hard to just be agnostic or atheist and totally reject, like what you said right at the beginning here as well. People want the fruits of our system, but they don't want to acknowledge where those fruits came from. And I think that's why the world's kind of on fire at the moment, because there's only so much you can turn your back and reject the very foundations of what you are before it will crumble, because that's what was holding it together. And so I think that generation was the catalyst, was the beginning of the rejection of Christ and the foundations of what built our once prosperous nations. And so I think that that generation kind of normalized, well, they desensitized and then normalized not going to church, not getting married, sleeping around before get married, try before you buy, the sexual revolution stuff, abortion, murder. Like they desensitized and normalized all of that, and now we're reaping the fruits of the system that they put in place.
Mhm. I think what's interesting about that, and it's hard to say for everybody, but in my experience in my life, it's when I find that people believe that something exists after they die, it determines the way that they live their life. And I think for the better, because when you believe that there is some kind of, even if it's like a reward for some people or like a judgment or whatever that may be, you tend to, or what I say you, I mean, like what I've observed is that people tend to live a better life if they feel like someone's watching them in their secret moments, if they feel like they're being observed, and that will add up to a future experience for them, whichever religion they may be. I find that they will probably do the right thing, because I think that humans will, if they can get away with stuff, will. And you and I have had this conversation privately before. We've talked about like how kids are pretty cheeky and will do some pretty naughty things, because it's like just in our nature to do that. And it takes a level of like discipline, as you were saying, and like morals, and where do those come from, and what is driving behind you sticking to that is interesting. And if you don't think that anything happens when you die, if you don't think that anyone's watching you, if you don't think that you'll ever get caught, if you don't think that it matters, then all of the behavior that comes out from that belief system is what I believe is the results that we have today in the world. So, regardless of whether your belief is 100% in like Christianity, I think you would have to acknowledge, even if you were an atheist, you have to acknowledge that the behavior of humans is better during their lifetime when I think that when they do believe that there is some kind of consequence for their actions and that something happens after they die. I think that drastically changes the way that society operates and the way that people behave.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you look at statistics as well for people who are religious, particularly Christianity had the highest statistics, but people who are religious are a lot happier, have less depression, have less mental health orders. They're like, yeah, it's, we could go through the science and we could go through whatnot, but yeah, statistics show that as well. And yeah, like it's funny how so many people think that the world corrupts babies and children, and that it's the corruption of the world that makes them do bad things. Whereas my understanding is that all human beings are totally depraved. Like we are born that way. We are born in sin. And it is literally by God's grace and only through his grace that he bestows his goodness upon us, and we're just reflecting his goodness in us, which is why we do good things. It's not our own merit. It's not our own, I'm better than that person, I have more willpower than that person, that's why I sin less. No, it's God's grace. And I'm very grateful for that. And yeah, I think that, well, as a Christian, my understanding is that everyone has inside of them a knowledge of the Creator, of God. It talks about it in in the Psalms, even, that you just look at creation and everybody knows it's inherited within us, that we're born with the knowledge that there is a Creator, that there is a God. And yeah, it's a comforting thing. Going back to talking about before, how learning and growth and our journeys and that, like I couldn't do it. I don't know how I could do it if I wasn't a Christian and I didn't have that in my life, because the things, yeah, like I've seen and I've had to witness, been exposed to, by God's grace alone, like I'm okay. I don't
Mm,
know what he's done. He's put like a plug in my brain. It stops me thinking about things. I don't know why. I have an incredible ability to just forget everything. I have no idea why, but the times where I don't, it's having that relationship with God and
mm,
knowing that, that He's defeated all evil and in the end He wins. So
mm.
I'm okay, and justice will come. He will wield that sort of justice for everything, and all will be made right. And so I take a lot of comfort in that. So I'm sure a lot of other people do as well. And
Mm.
yeah, I think that you just have to look at the world. What are the countries that thrive the most? They all have something in common. They were all built on the same foundations. So
Yeah, like there's so much nuance, I think, because people here's my experience being a non-Christian. I find that a lot of Christians don't want to acknowledge the bad things that have come from those situations, and they tend to want to focus on the
from
good,
what situations?
from like the way that the world has been built, and then the other side only wants to acknowledge the bad things. They don't want to acknowledge all the good things that have come from that. And so with both people ignoring both sides, I find that we get in this stalemate. And I think that just because one exists doesn't mean that it should cancel out the other. And I think that um, what I find frustrating is when I get into like the comment sections of a lot of videos that I see, or a lot of content that I may consume that may be one way or the other, whether, because I do follow a lot of like let's say very left people for my own education, for my own. I want to know why you're thinking that. I want to know what you're thinking and why, and I want to know what you're sharing with other people and telling them is the truth. And I'm interested in your experience of what this may be like, because I find that fascinating. So I see both sides a lot. And then I see a lot of people who are in the middle. And then I see a lot of people who are more on the right. I see people who are very fundamentalist as well. I follow people who are um, I follow people who are Islamic. I follow people who are Mormon. I follow people who are Jehovah Witness. I follow all like people who are kind of on the extreme ends of things. I want to understand the full spectrum. That's just my interest, because I find that stuff fascinating. So I do get exposed to what happens when you get in like a echo chamber or like a bias, and when people say, well, they're not acknowledging this, they're not acknowledging like the harms of colonization, right? Or I love watching Black people talk about slavery from a standpoint of where, like, I literally saw a video yesterday where a Black guy was arguing with a white man about slavery, and he was like, Blacks had slaves
Yeah.
first and last. They were the last people to give
And
up
they
slaves.
still do today.
Yeah.
Like,
So this, and the white guy's going, no, and it was like, he's like, I'm Black. Like, come on, So I always find that kind of stuff really fascinating as well. But that's what I like. I like when like they can acknowledge the good, and they can acknowledge the bad. Like, yeah, we did some bad things, and there were like these things that happened, but there was also these good things that came out of it as well. And so
mm,
I think that's where people get stuck, because people get really defensive, like, no, 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 it's a good thing, or no, 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 it's a bad thing. And we're not acknowledging the bad things that come from that. And then people get very upset because it feels like that some of the hurt or the pain is getting swept under the rug. And not just in Christianity, I feel like in all history, even when people romanticize like the 1950s
that was terrible.
trad wife lifestyle. They're like, we were so much better back then. I was like, no, that there were bad things that happened back
Mm,
then. When women didn't have rights, there was also not some good things that happened. There may have been some great things that happened at that time as well. Like, we can talk about both without saying that this is the ideal or this is perfect. We can take what was good from that and take what's good from now and like make a great. Like that would be fantastic. We don't have to choose one like worse or worser. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. I
it's an
think
interesting.
for me, though, something that I think is important to remember is so often, though, a lot of people do things in the name of something, but it's not
Mm,
actually what it is.
yeah.
So, for example, if we're using Christianity, there are
Mm,
so many things that Christian people who say that they're Christians do that is
yeah.
not Christian. And so that's something I like to just differentiate because history shows a lot of bad people doing a lot of bad things under a whole
Into the name.
variety of names. And so when I'm speaking about Christianity and this and that, it's not based off this particular group of people. It's just literally purely based off the Bible and the Bible alone. And that's where I base like my definition of Christianity. It's not something that this church has said or that church has said. It's literally what the Bible says, and that's how I do it. But I think there's been a lot of bad things done under a lot of bad names. But I also think as much as I'm happy to hear how things concern people, and as much as I'm happy to take on board and be teachable, to learn, to change, to grow, and something which is important is you're allowed to change your mind on things. like I used to be the loser who said it was Judeo-Christian values that made our country. Like, what a fool. I used to say stupid stuff like that. It wasn't. It's an oxymoron. And so you can grow and you can change. That's totally fine. But I'm just not going to feed into things that I know aren't true. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's something that I just won't.
The
I won't do.
Judeo-Christian thing.
A lot of people say Judeo-Christian values. Judaism and Christianity are not the same religion. They're not. They're completely different religions. And so we've put them together like under the assumption that they're the same God, the same Bible, the same laws, the same morality, when they're totally not. It's the same.
Right.
It'd be the same as saying it was Islam, Christianity that created Australia. Like, it's that polar opposite to Christianity. Like, you can't, it gets confused because the Judaism use Old Testament like books of the Bible in their religion, but yeah, it's an oxymoron. It's like saying that I'm a vegan butcher. Like, it's just silly. So I've learned, and I don't use that ever. But once upon a time, I probably would have. In fact, I think I did a podcast once and someone said it and I agreed, and I look back at it now and I just want to slap myself in the face because I've learned, I've grown. And so that's okay. But yeah, I'm just not going to feed into things that I know aren't true. I'm happy to hear people's perspectives and how it hurt them. But even if they're hurt, I wouldn't be like, maybe if I know that something isn't inherently wrong or immoral, I wouldn't feed into pretending that it was, if that makes sense. For example, with colonization, 100% white settlers and things did bad things. They brought alcohol, they brought drugs, but I'm just not going to feed into the lie that white men were the only bad ones during that time. I refuse to do it. I've read journals of missionaries who came over and went into remote Indigenous communities, and some of the things that you read are that horrific, and it would make you want to vomit, some of the things that they recorded that they saw. And so for me, I just think that history has been written unfavorably towards certain groups more than others. And the more I learn, the more I read, the more I research, the more I'm like, I think everything I've learned is perhaps not actually what it is. And I'm not sure we'll ever know 100% what it was, but I'm not going to feed into the lie of things. So as much as I can hear people's perspectives and their experiences and that they got hurt, I would more go, but why does that hurt? Because you're getting hurt based off something that's not founded in truth. And that's perhaps a problem, because you'll keep running into that unless you can live in reality. And so that's something that I might come across harsh or blunt or unfeminine, but I actually don't think it is. I think that living in truth and reality and not delusion is super important to all human beings, whether you're a man or a woman.
Mm.
But as a Christian, like I said, I can grow and I can change, but I'm not going to pretend that all religions are equal. I'm not going to pretend that all cultures are equal. I'm not going to pretend that how each person lives their life is all equal, because I just know that that's not true.
It's not.
So
Maybe they say Judeo-Christian because there's a lot of, oh, like if I say this, I'm totally going to get cancelled. I just realized.
cut the feed.
Edit this out. Edit it out. I was going to go into some conspiracies of like some higher ups being particularly of one religion and having a lot of the money and the power, and perhaps that's where they're saying they have some influence in creating culture in the West. Possibly. I don't know. That's why I asked. I had no idea where this came from or why, or like, I didn't, like, why do we say that? I don't, what is it that people think is the same? Like, I know that there's like the 5 books of the, is it 5 or 4 books of the Torah?
5.
5 books of the Torah.
It's all the Mosaic books,
yeah.
It's all the the books that Moses wrote.
Yeah.
In the Bible. Yeah. So
and they go into the, but there's so much more in the Old Testament than just those books. And then there's so much more to Judaism than just those books as well. That's like, it's like a spit in a mouthful of saliva, but basically what a gross analogy, but that's all that came to me at the moment.
We'll go with that. But it's interesting because it's in the Bible. It talks about, Jesus is talking, and he says to the Jews at the time that if you believed Moses, which is those 5 books that they have, if you believed Moses, then you would believe me, because he's who I was. He's who he was. I am who he was talking about. Good grief, it's late. And so that's like the whole point. Like there's just no such thing as, they're not the same religion. Yeah. Because who the God that they believe in their Bible is obviously someone very different to.
Oh, it's a vastly different God.
Yeah. So that's why I just won't say it.
Yeah.
But, yes, I don't know if we can remain. If we get really into that, maybe we.
Like maybe we're just. I like you. I find it fascinating. I find this stuff. I could sit and listen and talk about this stuff all day. But it is getting late. So maybe we do wrap this up, because I know that you need to go and eat as well. And thank you for thank your stomach for me for putting your time aside.
It's all good
to spend some time. But yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that you have been such a strong voice, and I think it's important that you are. I think it's important that you are unashamed. How do you say that word?
Unashamedly.
There we go.
Yeah, it's one of those BD silent letter.
My brain wanted to say unashamedly.
Yeah, I know.
That's not right.
Wednesday.
Yes. To get her.
Yeah. Oh dear. Kenneth.
Yes.
Yeah, anyway, we could go on.
You unashamedly just like who you are, and I think that's really important, and I think that's a really good example. And like you and I have different beliefs, but we're actually still very respectful to each other, and we're still good friends as well. And I also love that, and I don't see that often, especially in this online realm where everyone's like picking a team and picking sides, and it's like confirmation bias, and I have to only speak to these people because these are the only sane people. I find so much value in you and who you are and the things that you say, even though we don't always agree. And I love that. I actually really enjoy that about our friendship. And I love that you continue to just show up as you. So I love who you are. And thank you very much for being you and coming and sharing it with everyone here as just randomly. We were like, let's just jump on and have a chat about who knows what will come up. And look at what came up. It was actually perfect.
No, friendship's been a real blessing to my life. And it's funny, like you said, we are such good friends, but like we have differences on things, and that's where respect comes in. And That's where, you know, we can love each other despite those things. And like, I genuinely do pray for you and care for you and your soul. And hopefully, I'm really hoping that one day you're going to say, you know what, Evelyn, you were right all those years. I was wrong and you were right. How do I meet Jesus? And I'll be like, yes. No. I always say that to you to tease you, but it secretly really is my hope.
Yeah, like I don't mind that you hope that for me. Like I'm very comfortable with where I'm at, and I don't see that as anything other than you loving me. Like I really don't see that as anything else. I don't have a problem with that at all. I love you for that, and thank you so much. And yeah, I think, you know, this is where I think you and I both know that even though we might have slightly different beliefs, our actual overarching morals and values and goals are actually very similar, and our hearts are in the right place. And that's, I think, what can join us in that love for each other is like, you're a good person and I'm a good person, and we can like,
and we
know
love to
that,
learn, both of
yeah,
us. We're always
yeah.
sending each other things, learning things. So it's
And
helpful
also
having friends that you can learn with as
and
well.
also lots of silly reels as well.
Oh yeah, they're great. We won't show some of those examples though. We'll
To
get
be,
banned.
well, to be honest, there's a lot of like 90s things.
There is, yes.
Just
Do you remember this
remember
song?
this? Yeah. 100%.
You remember this? They were the days. I'll tell you what, that was like peak moment, like the 90s, early 2000s. Oh, that was good.
Right before technology came and ruined everything.
Ruined everyone, fried our brains,
I
put
know.
us in the fight on the front lines.
So
No.
sad.
Yeah, but thanks for having me, even though I'm, you know, such a strong Christian voice and you're not. I appreciate the time, and hopefully you don't get banned from some of the things you might need to edit, but
Fine. It's fine. They've banned me before. They've banned you before.
they've banned me.
Like,
How dare I get Dr. Peter McCullough on and talk about certain things that are now mainstream? Like, wow.
yeah,
See what?
I know.
Full
We both had
circle.
our accounts pulled. It's just like, what a
I already know
time.
what my next fight is, though.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
I can already feel it. Like, I feel like COVID was like the birth
Mm.
of like the fight, and then it's like there's just no hill that I'm willing to die on now. But there, I've just discovered, in light of all recent events going on in the world with all these wars, there is a hill I am willing to die on. I just don't know how I'm going to do it. And also, whilst staying true to the fact that I don't want to be on the front lines, but there is a hill I have discovered, but I don't think people are ready to hear it. So I'll drop that little Easter egg.
Rude. Okay.
When
Well,
you turn it off, I'll tell you privately.
right. I was going to say, as long as I get to hear it, that's fine.
You'll be one of the first. I'll be like, I told you.
Okay. Well, that's good. Look,
Hmm.
I think it's good that you keep your passion for something. Keep that up because it's in you, and it's, you know, you were blessed
I
with
think a
it
lot of
for a
people are
reason.
noticing the same things.
Dropping more hints. I like it.
Anyway,
Well, all right. How about we make an agreement that when you are ready to die on that hill, you'll come back on and we'll unpack it online.
let's do it.
Awesome.
Done. You will be my first and probably last if I do that. But I will. I will reserve that for you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Thanks for having me.